Hello again. This is Jomo Rising, and I'm here to talk about Jon Pertwee's run as the Doctor. This is very unscripted, but I have put together a handful of images from that particular story to uh, keep me on track, and we'll see how that goes. Um, this first story goes back to 1970. uh, a story called Spearhead from Space. It was a four-part story, and it was the first story in color. And the first scenes in color might have been, well, surprising, although I'm not sure if in 1970 how many people had color TVs that they could take advantage of it, but uh, I'm I just haven't looked into that. But it's interesting potential. The history of television, as it were. But the history of Doctor Who starts in color with this episode, and I'm I would not discount Doctor Who in the '60s by any means. Uh, However, I do think the audience was. I think I mentioned this before. The audience was geared towards children, and by the '70s, those 1963, 1964 children had, they didn't want to necessarily want to watch children's programming. Uh, and I think one of my themes throughout Jon Pertwee's time that I would talk about is that his shows were um, not childlike. They were they had they had edge to them, and some things that were revolting, and things that were gross, and things that were frightening and dark. And uh, I feel that those themes exist in the best of Doctor Who. Uh, and when things get flighty or bouncy or comedic in their presentation, uh, those shows in Doctor Who aren't as interesting to me. Not to say that I don't like comedy in Doctor Who, and Jon Pertwee, as we shall see as we go through his stories, are often quite funny. Yeah, that Jon Pertwee was a comedian, and to some extent that comes through in his performance. It doesn't change the fact, though, that there's a lot of dark, um, dark themes, or you know, it some of the stuff is pretty scary. And I think it is now that maybe those kids that were growing up in the '70s who wanted to watch what their older siblings were watching and got into Doctor Who and found them terrifying. There's stories, I remember hearing stories of kids hiding behind the couches as their brothers or what have you watched Doctor Who. And yeah, we're going to see some of that. But we had a lot of newness here, 1970, starting with Spearhead. We have a new doctor, Jon Pertwee. Uh, we have a new companion, Liz Shaw, played by Carolyn John, and the late, great Carolyn John. And uh, the Brigadier comes back. played by Nicholas Courtney, the late great Nicholas Courtney. And yeah, this is the team pretty much for the first season. There's other unit personnel, but generally speaking, these are the three people we're going to see if we're not seeing episode-specific people or villains throughout this season. But I really liked Liz Shaw as a character. It was a strong female character, and in fact, this show states that she's not just another pretty face, and take of that what you will. But yeah, definitely has a mind of her own, probably in line with other companions to come, and in the past, I would state Zoe was similar. But anyways, continuing on, I think I know it down 14 minutes into the first episode of Spearhead that we actually get a good look at the new Doctor. That I don't think they would ever do that today. That they would develop the other new characters before they develop the new Doctor. But that's the case, and it sounds like the heater just came on, so forgive any interference. But yeah, we find the Doctor. I'm not going to go too much into the story or spoil it in any way, but the Doctor is, as he often is in his first episode, he's going through a trauma, or he is at his weakest, I guess, and he is hospitalized after being sent to Earth in exile. He forced to regenerate, and he regenerates, falls out of the TARDIS, and is hospitalized. And he has a fun escape scene from the hospital where he is actually shot by a unit guard and returned to hospital. But we slowly see the story unfold with the autons, the Nestine consciousness, as some may know from Christopher Eccleston's first episode, which is also a great first episode. They meet the walking mannequins, and that happened first in this story with the autons walking through the streets, shooting people, causing terror, especially in this show. I think in this story, the terror of the autons is it's not set to action music, or it's meant to be scary, to be frightening, to see these silent forms walking behind somebody before blasting them, and people screaming and running, and it's the mood is to be dark and frightening. I like that. The character who represents the Nestine is very strange-looking man, and he's another oddity that you don't often see villains being such seemingly passive characters, and but still, he he's he appears occasionally, and we're starting to see connections made between these the meteors that fall at the beginning of the show and the autons. The doctor is laid up in the hospital again, like I said, and then waking up fairly suddenly, he escapes again, and he has one of if not the only shower scene in all of Doctor Who. I know there's a scene where Peter Davison's Doctor is getting ready for shower, but I don't recall ever seeing the Doctor or any other character, for that matter, actually in the shower, showering. And this too, because Jon Pertwee is such an amazing actor. I don't think he could ask any other actor to do this shower scene in his first or second episode. I don't remember where this play. I think it might be the second episode. Yeah, and it's very funny. But I even if another Doctor had a shower scene, I mean, some of the actors are good enough that they could definitely pull it off, but to watch the shower scene in Spearhead from space, I just can't imagine they would ever do anything like that again. And not that it was risque or anything. It was just the way it was, pure Jon Pertwee, and it was awesome. But then the Doctor steals some clothes because the Doctor doesn't mind doing that, I think. He steals some clothes, and we see him put a hat on, and then another hat, and that hat is almost never worn again throughout the entire run of Jon Pertwee's time. He wears it a few times in this second episode, and then never again. So it really wasn't part of his costume, even if the rest of it was the cape and the black suit and the floral and the rippled shirt. Can't think of the word. Oh, and we get a more formal meeting of the third Doctor when he returns to unit and has an encounter with the Brigadier and Liz Shaw, and he does the thing that the Doctor often does. He looks in the mirror to see his new face, and talks about as the Doctor often does, talks about his new face. Then we get more of the Auton storyline, and the side characters involved in the story, and they're often just terrified. They're Auton's approach in a way that is where they heighten the suspense and the terror of the situation. And they balance that with Jon Pertwee being quite humorous. So it's not all dark and dreary. It's quite a contrast. And again, the Doctor can't believe that he has been exiled to Earth, and so through trickery, he gets the key to the TARDIS and tries to escape. But the TARDIS has been grounded pretty much by the Time Lords, and the Doctor's mind has been played with, so that he would not know how to pilot the TARDIS. And we get another funny scene, and then that is contrasted again with side characters being terrorized by Autons, as some of these side characters have found the meteorites that are important to the Autons, and those side characters are assaulted by the Autons, and the meteorites are recovered in order to, we'll get in, the, the nesting consciousness is being rebuilt on Earth by these meteorites. And it is here, I think, in the last episode, or maybe the end of the third episode, I don't quite remember, where the Autons are walking through the street shooting people, where the plastic mannequins are coming to life, producing weapons and blasting people down. People panic. The Autons walk through the street like they're gun-toting gangsters just going out shooting people. And yeah, it is the tension is rising to the climax of the story. And the Doctor and Liz, having now interacted with the side characters and drawing upon Unit for information and a lab, they put together a device they think can stop the nesting, the intelligence. As Jon Pertwee's Doctor often does, he has created a device that will do something. It is very unlike future shows where the Doctor has these things already in place, where he has K9 or he has other tricks and gadgets already made. He didn't have to make them on the spot like he does during these seasons of Jon Pertwee's time. But he goes and has a classic confrontation with the nesting, and things get very hairy, and but yeah, that is what it all leads up to, is this confrontation between the Doctor and the nesting, very similar to the Christopher Eccleston episodes. The music is geared towards fright and suspense, and I kind of miss that. I love, and that's what I really liked about these seasons. I'd say 1970 to 1975, or yeah, 1970 to 75, or I would go, actually, yeah, 78. Let's make it 78. 1970 to 78. Um, um, and this might be, I'm not sure, but it might be the first time that the Doctor calls himself Dr. John Smith. I might be wrong about that. But the Brigadier asks him his name at the very end of the final episode in the story, and Doctor responds, Smith, Dr. John Smith. And um, it, overall, and it was good. It was frightening. It was a good story, solid story, and but also funny and a great introduction to what this Doctor is going to be like with his being very active and being very uh, uh, being always being on the scene and going where the danger is uh, and then creating a device that will save the day or what have you, be useful in his efforts. And uh, yeah, so we get a good picture of what this Doctor is going to be like. Funny and smart, very often right, sometimes biting. He does he does do something that I have heard people complain about in this story. He says, well, you wouldn't understand. He says something to the effect of, well, you wouldn't understand anyways. So uh, it is his short temper with the humans around him is noticeable. And it will increase in the future episodes of this season, that we will see the Doctor being starting on an aggressive or angry note with certain humans, and deservedly so, I would say. Anyways, I will stop here, and the next episode, I believe, is the Silurians. And until then, this is Jomo Rising, signing off.